Ivy inhaled deeply, her eyes filling with sadness. This was the moment. She had to say it, even if it felt like the world was crumbling around her. "We're having a baby," she blurted out, the words leaving her lips faster than she could process them. The room fell silent. Josiah sat up, frozen, his towel still draped over his shoulders. His gaze met hers, incredulous. He chuckled softly, a sound that didn't feel right at all. "We, as in you and me?" he asked, his voice thick with disbelief. Ivy's heart sank. She had hoped for a different reaction, a smile, even a tear of happiness. But all she got was a hollow laugh. Josiah's face darkened, his voice suddenly cold. "In this economy? Have you lost your mind? Look at how we're living. Do you really think we can afford this, you foolish woman?" Ivy's stomach twisted in knots. She hadn't imagined this. "I thought you wanted this. I thought you wanted to be a father." Ivy's voice was barely above a whisper, trembling like a flame in the wind. "Please don't stress me," he muttered, thumb still busy. "You better do the needful, Ivy. I'm not ready for this." He sat up now, anger rising like a storm in his chest. "What happened to your pills, Ivy?" She swallowed, voice cracking. "I got tired, Josiah. Tired of swallowing chemicals every day. My body is not a machine." "Oh, so now it's my fault? You got tired and decided to trap me?" he snapped, pulling his shirt over his head aggressively. "You intentionally got pregnant. That's on you." "No." Ivy reached out, but he moved away, grabbing his jeans. "I didn't trap you. I was scared too. But children are blessings. This could be our blessing." Josiah scoffed, already standing, slipping on his shoes with quick, sharp movements. She clutched his arm. "Please, don't go. Let's fix this. We can talk, make a plan. I will work. I will sell food, clean houses, do anything if I have to. Just stay. Don't throw everything away." What happens when the man you sacrificed everything for tells you the love was never real? Just convenience? But Ivy's story doesn't end here. Because sometimes, being broken is the first step toward becoming untouchable. Where are you watching from? If you are just joining us, subscribe as we follow Ivy's journey. He paused, looking at her hand on his arm. Then his lips curled, not in kindness, but in something colder. "You just ruined the fun," he said. "Fun?" Ivy echoed, stunned. Josiah nodded, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Yeah, the fun. You say love, I say convenience. We had a good thing, no kids, no pressure. You went and changed the whole game, without me." "But you said you loved me," Ivy whispered. "I said it 5 years ago. Maybe I meant it then." He opened the door. "Now? I don't even know." And with that, he stepped out, leaving the door ajar and her heart wide open, bleeding. Ivy stood there, unmoving. The word fun echoed louder than anything he'd ever said. 5 years, reduced to a fling in his eyes. The silence after his footsteps felt like grief. Heavy, suffocating, final. Josiah stood by the door, phone pressed to his ear, his voice casual, almost cheerful. "Yeah, I'm on my way. Give me a few minutes," he said, then ended the call without even glancing at Ivy. She stood in the middle of the room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as though holding herself together. "Josiah," she called, her voice fragile. "Can we just talk?" But he didn't stop to listen. He walked to the corner of the room and began pulling clothes from the drawer into a duffel bag. Shirts, jeans, boxers, all of it shoved in with cold precision. "You told me you loved me," she said, her voice cracking like dry wood. "You said we were in this together, that we were building something." "That was before," he said flatly, zipping the bag. "Before you decided to rewrite the story on your own." "I didn't rewrite anything," Ivy breathed, heart pounding. "This was never just my story." He looked at her now, finally, but his eyes were unreadable. "I'm not going down that road with you, Ivy. I didn't sign up for fatherhood, not now, not like this. But you..." She took a step forward, pain blooming in her chest. "I gave my life to you, Josiah. I left my family. I moved in with you 5 years ago. I breathed when you breathed. I built my days around your needs." He slung the bag over his shoulder. "That was your choice. You said we were partners," she cried. Josiah laughed under his breath, not with humor, but exhaustion. "We were having fun, Ivy. That's all. You took it too far." Fun. The word rattled inside her like a cruel joke. 5 years of cooking for him, supporting his dreams, sharing bills, fighting beside him, and he called it fun. "No ring. No promises," he added. "I never signed a contract." Ivy's hands fell to her sides, limp. Her whole body felt hollow. "You promised me a wedding," she whispered. "You said when your business picked up..." "I said a lot of things," Josiah interrupted, walking past her like she was invisible. "I need space." "Where are you going?" she asked, panic creeping in. "Someone's place," he said vaguely, already reaching for the door. "You planned this," she murmured. "Didn't you?" He didn't answer. He didn't even blink. He just stepped out and shut the door behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ivy didn't cry right away. She just stood there, the quiet pressing against her skin like weight. Her eyes drifted to the empty spot where his shoes used to be. The space was cleaner than she expected, like he'd never truly been part of her world. Finally, she sank to the floor. 5 years, and he left like it was nothing. "I'm pregnant," she whispered to the room, "and I'm alone." Her voice barely made it past her lips, but inside her, something broke. And in its place, something else began to burn. 2 days later, Ivy had fallen asleep on the couch, her body curled tightly beneath a thin wrapper. The untouched plate of rice on the stool beside her had long gone cold, just like the silence in the room. She hadn't eaten since morning. Grief had gnawed away at her appetite. Sleep wasn't rest. It was escape. A sudden clatter jolted her awake. Her eyes blinked open groggily to the sound of the front door creaking. For a brief second, she thought she was still dreaming, until she saw him. Josiah. He walked in as if nothing had happened, barely sparing her a glance as he made his way to the wardrobe. Without a word, he pulled it open and began gathering the rest of his clothes, shirts, jeans, belts, shoving them into a travel bag in sharp, impatient motions. She sat up slowly, heart hammering. "Josiah, where have you been?" No answer. His silence was a knife. "You're leaving?" she asked, voice small, brittle. "You're really walking away from us?" Still not looking at her, he replied coldly, "I'm not responsible for that child." Ivy froze. Her mouth opened, but the words tangled in her throat. She watched him zip the bag before he added, "And if I am, then take this..." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few folded notes, throwing them on the table. "Use it. Get rid of it. I've got plans, a future. I'm not ready to be somebody's father." She stared at the money like it was poison. "What am I supposed to tell my parents?" she whispered, shaking. "They warned me. Everyone warned me, but I didn't listen. I told them you were different." Tears now rolled freely down her cheeks, burning like acid. She clutched the wrapper tighter against her chest as if that would keep her from falling apart. "If this is a nightmare," she murmured to herself, voice breaking, "please, someone wake me, please." How could she have been so naive? How had she let herself fall so deeply for a man who never made a vow? She'd given him her loyalty, her time, her body, and now her future hung in the balance. "I was so stupid," she said, more to herself than to him. "Getting pregnant for a man who never saw me as a wife." Josiah gave her one last look, blank, devoid of any warmth, not even a flicker of remorse. She wanted to scream, to beg, but the lump in her throat choked every word. Just leave, she thought. Go. And he did, without apology, without concern. The door shut quietly behind him, but to Ivy, it sounded like the final blow in a cruel battle. She was alone now, truly alone. No income, no job, no support. She dropped to her knees, shoulders shaking, tears dripping onto the floor. She couldn't speak anymore. She couldn't find the strength. She curled into herself on the couch, hands over her stomach, as if trying to protect what little remained of the world she once believed in. 5 months had crawled by since that chaotic, rainy day. And here Ivy was again, crouched by a charcoal stove in the corner of the marketplace, stirring a pot of smoky, peppery jollof rice. The same hustle she had once been forced to abandon by a man who once whispered promises of forever into her ears was now the very thing she clung to. Her hands moved with practiced rhythm, flipping plantains, checking the stew, wiping sweat from her brow. The heat was stifling, smoke rising and curling around her like ghosts of memories she wished she could forget. But she couldn't stop. She couldn't afford to. It wasn't easy, but survival never was. She eased herself onto a wooden stool, her back aching, one hand resting gently on her growing belly. Her eyes lifted slightly to the gray sky above the rusted zinc roof overhead, and she murmured a quiet prayer. Not for miracles, just for a good day at the market. Just enough sales to buy what she needed to eat, and maybe a little extra to save. A day without insults, a day without shame. But peace in this place was as fleeting as the morning breeze. A sudden rise in voices pulled her from her thoughts. The market stirred. Murmurs, then movement, then panic. They were back. The market tax enforcement team, the same men who descended weeks ago like a storm, were back on their rounds. Their voices rang out harshly, barking orders at vendors who had set up near the gutters or without formal stalls, warning them, threatening them. Again. Ivy's heart sank. She didn't have a shop, couldn't even dream of affording one. Her little wooden table with the umbrella was all she had, all she could manage. And now, that too was under threat. Before she could gather her thoughts, one of the officials strode toward her, gesturing wildly. "Madam, how many times we go tell Una? No selling near gutter. If you no move now, we go seize everything." Ivy stood quickly, hands shaking, voice trembling. "Please, sir, I don't have where else to go. I just day manage. Please." But her plea was met with scorn. One of them kicked at the stool beside her, knocking over the plastic cooler of rice. The food tumbled onto the dirt, mixing with sand and ash. Again. The same pain, the same humiliation. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling freely as she bent to try and salvage what she could. "Please, I beg you, this is all I have." They didn't care. Another officer demanded payment, a fine she couldn't afford. 5,000 naira or pack out now, he said coldly. Ivy cried openly now, the weight of it all too much. Rent unpaid, no antenatal checkups, no baby clothes, no rest. Just this endless fight to stay afloat in a world that seemed determined to drown her. She clutched her belly protectively, whispering a broken apology to the child within. "I'm trying. I swear I'm trying." And still, the world did not slow down. The bills still came, the fire still burned, and the pot would still have to be replaced. But she would not give up. Not now. Not when she had something, someone to fight for. Bruce wasn't supposed to be at the market that day. He was simply passing through, stuck in the usual mid-morning gridlock along the main road that snaked past the bustling stalls. The market, a chaotic stretch of tarpaulin tents and makeshift tables, lay just off the side of the road, a place he usually ignored on his way to the hospital for checkups. But today, something pulled his attention. As he glanced out of the car window, He saw the scene unfold. Uniformed market officials shouting, vendors scrambling, pots clattering to the ground. His eyes stopped on one figure in particular, a woman, pregnant. She was crying, clinging to what was left of her stand, her belly clearly heavy with child. Her food, the little she had, lay ruined in the dirt, kicked aside like it meant nothing. Bruce's hand hovered near the door handle, instinct urging him to step out and do something. But then, he hesitated. She's likely married, he reasoned silently, trying to silence the discomfort growing in his chest. Her husband will come. Someone will come for her. The traffic inched forward, and with it, so did Bruce. The image of her, tired, broken, helpless, lingered in his rearview mirror until the marketplace faded behind him. By the time he reached the hospital, the weight in his chest hadn't lifted. He sat quietly in the waiting area, the hum of fluorescent lights above him and the sterile smell of disinfectant thick in the air. He had come to reconfirm what he'd already been told once before, that the cancer treatments, while life-saving, had left him infertile. The earlier diagnosis was clear. He could not father a child naturally. Still, a part of him had clung to a sliver of hope. The nurse called his name, and after a short wait, the doctor handed him the envelope, sealed and heavy in implication. Bruce opened it slowly. The result was final, irreversible, no natural conception, but there was something no one knew. Before the cancer took its toll, Bruce had preserved his sperm, an act of foresight he never told anyone about, not even his closest friends. It was a secret tucked away in a fertility clinic in another state. At the time, he wasn't sure he would live, let alone become a father. But now, everything had changed, especially after his father's passing. The late Chief Dominic's will was clear and uncompromising. Only a married son with a biological child would be eligible to inherit any portion of his vast estate. Bruce had kept to himself, avoiding family drama, content to heal and rebuild. But now, word was spreading. Another man, Charles, had surfaced. A distant cousin claiming blood rights. And he wasn't just claiming. He had proof. A child. That changed everything. Bruce knew what was coming. It would be more than a legal fight. It would be war, a war for legacy, recognition, and the family empire. Ivy had been rounded up with a handful of other vendors, those who couldn't afford to pay the market fine. The officers showed no pity, her protests drowned out by the blare of engines and barked orders. Before she could gather herself, she was pushed into the back of a rusted security van, the metal floor jarring beneath her as it drove off, leaving behind her scattered food, upturned pots, and dignity in the dirt. Somewhere across town, Bruce sat hunched over a counter in a dimly lit bar, a half-empty glass in his hand, and 1,000 unsaid thoughts crashing in his chest. The television in the corner played low, the buzz of chatter and clinking glasses forming a dull backdrop to the storm brewing inside him. He took another slow sip, trying to drown the truth he'd been running from. He couldn't tell anyone, not even his mother. She had been relentless ever since the reading of the will. Get married, Bruce. Fast. You're the first son. That legacy belongs to you. But how could he explain that he was no longer the man he used to be? The chemo, the surgeries, they had taken more than just time and energy. They'd taken his ability to father a child naturally. The words from the specialist echoed in his mind like a curse. Permanent infertility. He remembered nodding, pretending to be fine, all while something inside him quietly broke. He had never told his mother, never told anyone. Not out of shame, but out of grief. A silent kind that made him feel less than whole, less than enough. And yet, through all of this, his mind wasn't focused on solutions, legal tactics, or alternative plans. Instead, it kept drifting back to her. The woman from the market. The one with trembling hands and tearful eyes. The one who had fought to hold her ground, to save a pot of food from being kicked into the mud. She wasn't part of his world, not by blood or fortune, but something about her had settled in his memory like an imprint. It didn't make sense, but it wouldn't go away. He paid his bill, stepped out into the night, and before he realized what he was doing, he was driving. The city lights blurred past him, and his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his heart thudding with a mixture of anxiety and something unnameable. Back at the market, most of the stalls had closed. Only a few tarpaulins flapped gently in the night breeze. Bruce pulled over and turned off the engine. He sat in silence, his eyes locked on the very spot where it had all happened. The same place where Ivy had stood, pleading. The same ground where her food had spilled. Some of her things were still there, abandoned and forgotten by the world, yet burned into his memory. He didn't know what he was doing. Not really. All he knew was that the woman's pain had touched something in him that his wealth, his power, and his silence had never been able to reach. He leaned back in the driver's seat, mind racing. The next morning arrived shrouded in a dull, gray sky. Bruce returned to the market, his thoughts heavy with the image of the pregnant woman he had seen in distress. But the spot where she had stood, where she had pleaded for mercy, was now empty. The food cart was gone, her pots and utensils missing, likely scavenged or stolen during the night. Only a single overturned bowl remained, half buried in the mud, surrounded by the scent of cold ash and loss. The absence felt like a wound. He approached an older woman seated nearby, someone he vaguely remembered from the day before. "Excuse me, the young pregnant woman from yesterday. Do you know where she is?" he asked, trying to mask the urgency in his tone. The woman gave him a knowing look, her expression a blend of pity and fatigue. "She didn't come back," she said gently. "They took her to the station yesterday. She spent the night there." Bruce felt something twist in his chest. "Do you happen to know her name?" "Ivy," the woman replied softly. "That's all I know. No husband, no help. Life just hasn't been kind to her." He whispered the name to himself, as if saying it would make her feel more real. Ivy. Without wasting time, Bruce made his way to the police station. The building loomed ahead, stark and impersonal. He stepped inside and approached the counter, asking for the woman who had been arrested the day before during the market sweep. After confirming her identity, he quietly paid the 5,000 naira fine. The officer at the desk narrowed his eyes at him. "Are you family?" he asked, skeptical. Bruce shook his head. Number just... Someone who couldn't forget what he saw. Moments later, the station door creaked open. Ivy emerged slowly, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion, her eyes ringed with the shadow of a sleepless night. She paused, confused, as her gaze met Bruce's. You paid for me?" she asked, her voice hoarse, almost unbelieving. He nodded once, gently. "Yes." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. She clutched her belly with one hand, the other brushing against her lips in disbelief. "I don't know you," she whispered, "but this is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." Thank you. Bruce didn't speak. He only offered his arm to support her as they walked slowly toward his car. Noticing how frail she looked, how tightly her clothes clung to her thin frame, how her lips trembled with weakness. He knew she needed food before anything else. They stopped at a quiet roadside restaurant. He ordered her a full meal: rice, stew, plantains, and a cold bottle of water. As the plate was placed in front of her, Ivy's hands shook. She ate with quiet urgency, every bite revealing just how long it had been since her last real meal. Her eyes, wide with hunger and emotion, filled with tears as she struggled to chew without sobbing. Bruce sat silently, letting her have that moment without interruption. When the meal was done, he asked gently, "Can I take you home?" She hesitated, embarrassed, but nodded. In a quiet voice, she gave him directions to the small, single-room apartment she rented in the outskirts of the slum. She called it home, but as Bruce drove her there, he knew in his heart it was more survival than sanctuary. When they arrived at Ivy's apartment, the sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. Her few belongings, clothes, utensils, a small mattress, some worn shoes, had been dumped carelessly outside, exposed to dust and the early morning drizzle. The door to her room was locked with a heavy, rusted padlock. Ivy stared in disbelief, her hands tightening around the straps of her bag. Tears welled in her eyes and streamed silently down her face. Bruce stood beside her, taking it all in. He didn't speak immediately. There was nothing that could be said to soften the blow. Finally, in a calm, steady voice, he said, "Come with me. Pack what you can. You shouldn't stay here anymore." Ivy looked up at him, unsure. I don't have anywhere else to go," she murmured. "And I can't repay you. I don't even know what you want from me." Her words trembled with fear and exhaustion. This kind of help, unasked for, overwhelming, frightened her. In a world that had taught her that kindness always came with a price, Bruce's silence made her uneasy. Bruce met her gaze with quiet conviction. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just want you to be somewhere safe, somewhere you can think clearly and decide what you want next. That's all." Still unsure, Ivy slowly nodded. She bent down, picked out the few items that hadn't been soaked or ruined, and followed Bruce back to the car. They didn't speak as he drove. The streets passed by in silence, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sigh from Ivy as she tried to process what was happening. Two strangers, one carrying the weight of unanswered questions, the other burdened by quiet compassion. Neither knew what came next, but in that moment, they shared something rare, an unspoken understanding that life, even in its hardest seasons, sometimes sends help in the form of unexpected hands. As the car rolled to a gentle stop in front of the marble-fronted mansion, Ivy's breath caught in her throat. The towering gates had parted moments earlier, revealing a world she had only seen in passing, the kind reserved for people whose lives didn't involve sleeping on worn-out mattresses or dodging market raids. The estate stretched out before her, pristine gardens bordered by hedges trimmed with impossible precision, and a driveway paved so smoothly it gleamed under the early evening sun. When Bruce stepped out and opened her door, she hesitated. Her feet felt glued to the floor of the car, her heart pounding in disbelief. "This way," he said gently. At the door, a neatly dressed woman stood waiting. She appeared to be in her early 50s, her posture firm but her expression kind. Bruce gave a small nod in her direction. "Ivy, this is Grace. She helps manage the house. She'll take care of anything you need." Grace stepped forward and offered Ivy a warm smile. "Come with me, dear. Your room's been prepared." Bruce had called ahead. He'd made arrangements before they even reached the house. Ivy followed Grace through wide hallways lined with art and subtle elegance. The house smelled of lavender and something freshly baked. Everything whispered serenity. No shouting, no heat, no hunger, just calm. When Grace opened the door to her room, Ivy nearly gasped. It was massive, larger than the entire apartment she had been thrown out of. A soft cream rug spread across the floor. The bed stood tall with thick layered sheets, and on the side table sat a pitcher of water and a bowl of fruits. Further in the corner, a small fridge hummed quietly, already stocked with juice, sandwiches, and fresh produce. Ivy didn't know what to say. There was no blinding sun overhead, no customers yelling for food, no uniformed men threatening to seize her belongings. Just quiet. Just peace. She turned slightly, her voice low, almost inaudible. "I didn't expect this. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do." Grace gave her a soft pat on the shoulder. "For now, just rest." As the door closed gently behind her, Ivy stood for a moment, still holding her bag. Then, slowly, she walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress gave way under her weight like a soft embrace. For the first time in what felt like years, her body didn't flinch from the seat beneath her. She didn't know what Bruce truly wanted, didn't know what tomorrow held. But one thing was clear. This was a kindness she never expected. And in that unfamiliar quiet, Ivy allowed herself to breathe, deeply, slowly. And for the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Bruce stood outside the guest room, hesitating for a moment before knocking softly. "Come in," Ivy's voice called out, low and calm. He stepped into the room. It was quiet, neatly arranged, still unfamiliar but slowly becoming hers. Ivy sat upright, her hands resting protectively on her belly. She looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and exhaustion. "How's the baby?" Bruce asked, his voice softer than usual. "Still kicking," she replied with a faint smile. "We're hanging in there." "How far along are you?" Bruce asked quietly. 6 months, she replied, her voice barely audible. Bruce inhaled deeply. What he was about to say needed to be handled carefully. "I haven't properly introduced myself," he began, walking further into the room. "I'm Bruce Dominic." Son of the late Chief Dominic. Ivy blinked, unsure of what to make of the formality. "There's something I want to offer you," he continued, his tone shifting. Ivy's smile faded. Bruce cleared his throat, choosing each word with precision. "I want to propose an arrangement. After delivery, I will take full custody of the child. You will be financially settled, permanently. A house, a business, comfort, everything you've dreamed of." Ivy stared at him, stunned. "You want to buy my child?" He didn't flinch. "You'll never have to worry again. No more suffering. You'll start a new life, anywhere you choose." Her lips parted, but the words didn't come. "So all of this, the kindness, the food, the shelter, was it just for the baby?" She stood up slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "So you want to erase me from my own child's life?" Bruce didn't speak. His silence was confirmation enough. She took a shaky breath, eyes darting around the beautiful room, the soft bed, the stocked fridge, the polished floors. "This is the dream life," she whispered, almost to herself. "And all I have to do is give up everything that matters." Bruce turned to the window, the tension in the air thick. "Ivy," he said quietly, "the will is being read in 5 months." Her head snapped toward him, the pieces clicking into place. 5 months? She repeated, her voice rising. "So that's it then? You need a child by then, and I'm your solution?" Her eyes narrowed. What kind of man plans a future by rewriting someone else's? What would you do if everything you wanted came with the price of your own blood? Where are you watching from? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Part 2 is coming soon.